Yeah, 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 yeah. Started in the land down under Redbelly in the mix. Blockchain revolution, fixing all the tricks. Vincent Gramoli, visionary in the game. Built a fork-proof chain, bringing the flame.
This AMA is for informational purposes only. Redbelly Network is a blockchain infrastructure provider and does not endorse or promote any financial products or investment opportunities. All opinions expressed are those of the speakers. Please do your own research to comply with applicable laws in your jurisdiction. Now that we've got that underway, welcome back, everyone. This is Redbelly Insights episode number 24. Vincent, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
We've had some great episodes. I think we've done a few, but I think in this new format where we're spotlighting you a good bit more, we've had two of these episodes. One was right here in the studio, here in Sydney. The other one was online. The latest one was like episode 22 or so. People were really enthralled by the discussion and great to get like some insights from you. So I'm hoping to continue that. But before we get into it, how was your break?
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, I could see the family, spend some time with my brothers, parents, kids. So that was awesome. We traveled around, stayed in Australia, but that was great.
Well, great to hear that you actually got to have a recharge. I was able to do that as well, spending some time just away from Sydney where it's like it's all noisy and stuff, and just doing something different and properly getting away. Feeling a lot of enthusiasm for what's coming, because we've got things like Project Acacia finishing up and, starting to see the results. We've got more research side of things like what you're doing over there, but let's get straight into it. In terms of opening up the year, it feels like the conversation around blockchain shifted. We're no longer just on explanations, white papers, or just pilots. Do you agree that we're moving from this phase of blockchain being like something we have to explain to one of, let's actually interpret what it means in practice? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are seeing a value in the blockchain technologies. That's undeniable. They might not understand all the intricacies in these, but I think they understand the value of it in terms of, collateral mobility, for example, or composability, like the idea that you can tap into different financial services with some assets, and you can, transfer it to use it as a collateral in some other financial service. I think there is this idea that the global network makes a lot of sense for financial product, at least.
I think it's really interesting because people just naturally, they don't think about, well, how does the database work? They're just like, well, I've got an app, it's got a database. Databases just work. I know, I can do this and that with them. If I'm a developer or if I'm a user, that they're storing my data. I don't think too much about the technical details. I can see blockchain getting to that stage with all the extra features it has above and beyond just your normal databases. So great to hear, and we'll push more on that. You've been, as if you're new to the show, obviously, you cover both the research and academic side of things, as well as what's going on in practice in industry. And being in both of those over the past few months, have you seen the tone of conversations change in either the academic or the industry part, or even regulatory circles? Have you seen, some shifts going on there?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like the regulatory thing, like in Australia, when we talk about public token infrastructure, that's a big recognition or a big progress in terms of the understanding of what this infrastructure can do and how it's decentralized. I think at the government level now, we can see that this understanding is maturing as well, as they were catching up with this nascent technology that we used to have. So now it's not nascent anymore because of that. In terms of the industry and academia in particular, what we can see is that, and this has been probably happening for longer than just a couple of months, but you can clearly see that now the industry is paying a lot of attention into proper research, right? So it's not like just a teenager building a blockchain in his garage anymore, right? It's like a company hiring very prestigious researchers, academics that will help really understand what didn't work in the first version of the blockchain technology. And now they are hiring these people that are working very hard, trying to rebuild from scratch the entire consensus stack or peer-to-peer networking stack in order to cope with the security vulnerabilities that had been detected before, or even the hacks that has happened in previous versions of the blockchain. So we can see that this is maturing a lot, and I think it's going in the right direction. We should do proper research and understand the scientific consequences of building such system.
We have that in finance, in traditional finance, all of this research and understanding of consequences, understanding and studies into where things went wrong, but also went right, and figuring out like the best pathways forward. What you mentioned there with the RBA, for example, is, and we can see clearly in the history from 2021 when they had Project Adam and it was a closed kind of pilot, invite only, and then to a public pilot in 2023 with the CBDC pilot, to what they're doing with Acacia. So there is this clear delineation of progression, and we can see that happening publicly. And, you know, given the stuff that is happening in blockchain, just how fast it happens from kids in the garage to maybe people that are working next for Redbelly once they build up that experience. I think it's great to see that speed running of testing the future of finance. Speaking of speed running and momentum, let's talk about research momentum and why this moment, like right now, matters. Before we get into the infrastructure and RWAs, I think it's worth grounding this discussion in what's been happening on the research side. So over the past few months, you've been seen publicly in several important milestones, including the Best Student Paper Award at Middleware, chairing the ICDCN in 2026, as we were just discussing. That's coming up, is it? In Japan?
I was just in Japan for ICDCN, was the PC chair, so
Okay.
I had to go in Nara, and that was from the 3rd of January till the 7th, I think.
Okay. Oh, fantastic. I was on holidays for part of that, so glad to see that you were working hard. And then you were also being invited to be a speaker at IEEE, the ICBC conference that's previously featured figures like Vitalik Buterin and Silvio Micali. That's really cool. What does that tell you about where the academic and technical conversation around blockchains is heading?
Yeah, so I think there is a huge interest. So this IEEE ICBC is a academic conference, so usually it's for scientists to publish paper more than industry related. But of course they're interested by industry.
Yeah, of course.
That's why Vitalik
Hand in hand.
invited to give a keynote several years ago.
Yep.
But what you can see is that they are interested by understanding more about things like Redbelly. How did academia and industry work together to come up with this public blockchain that now, runs the CBDC for Australia.
Yeah.
That has these coins that are essentially Australian dollars backed by the RBA.
Exactly.
So they want to learn more about these things, like concrete examples where this academic research met with the industry and the government in this particular instance. So yeah, it tells a lot. I think it tells about the interest that the academic community has about applications of distributed systems, for example, cryptography, game theory, which is called blockchain.
Well, fantastic. And speaking of that, do you think that researchers are focusing, say, less on the novelty side of things and more on important things we need in the real business world, like accountability, failure modes, real world constraints? Do you think that there's more of that kind of focus?
Yeah, but I think still what we have to do is to be innovative in accountability. Okay. So I still think that we're looking for more novelties, but it's clear that there are paths or directions where we want to innovate. Security, still there's a lot of work to be done there. Accountability is part of it. Cryptography, when we talk about post-quantum crypto, we need to figure out a way to switch a button and then move on to post-quantum cryptographic libraries, which is, there are techniques known in order to do that, but then how can you still be efficient, after you've switched the button? That's the problem, right? You become post-quantum crypto, which means that you can protect your system against new quantum computation that could break the traditional cryptographic library, but you still need to be scalable, have high performance, large scale. So there is a lot of work to be done. We know that this direction has been there for a while, but we still need to innovate in this direction. Accountability is a very important topic. I think it's key. And beyond that, I think it relates to the junction of distributed systems and game theory, right? So just to go into more details about that, I think it's extremely important because, distributed computing scientists have modeled the world very simply in the sense that they said, okay, there are bad guys. There are essentially Byzantine, let's say, participants.
Yes.
And these guys are really, really malicious. Like they can do the worst thing possible. and they're modeled such that they're pretty much kamikaze, like participants who would do whatever it takes to break something, even though it costs them a lot. They would do it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like super bad guys, right? And then on the other end, you have the super good guys, and these guys are honest, they're altruistic, they will do whatever it takes to make sure the system works, right? But this is not the real world. Like, it's a simplification, and that's normal, right? In science, we do models in order to model the reality, but we're at times far from the reality. Now, you have game theoretician, and game theoretician said, okay, we have players. It's a game, right? So blockchain is a set of participants that we will call players. And now if we can reach a Nash equilibrium, it essentially means that everyone will execute the protocol like this, because if one of them deviates and changes its strategy, then it will start losing money, for example, or something that will decrease its utility function.
Yeah, exactly.
And now the thing is great, right? But Nash equilibrium is not realistic for what we need in blockchain. And the reason is that if one deviates, he will lose. So he will not do that alone. But what happens in blockchain is that now we can see coalition of people.
Yeah.
They team up together. They call themselves, they go on IRC chat or whatever.
Yeah.
And they synchronize and they say, you know what? At 12 p.m. tomorrow, we're going to attack the blockchain. And because we're many of us, we're gonna steal a lot of money, right? A lot of assets. And this is really the problem of the game theoretical model that are oversimplistic and do not match the reality. And so now what we have to do, and I think this is accountability essentially, is making sure that we can incentivize people so that they will behave correctly. They will not join a coalition. They will not try to synchronize an attack all together at the same time, just because there is enough utility for them to play along the rules of the protocol. So what I'm trying to work on these days on accountability is trying to bridge the gap between this game theoretical model that is great, but not so realistic, because at the end of the day, you still have players that you cannot model the utility of. And trying to bridge the gap with the distributed computing model, which is everyone is bad or honest, and trying to find a system where essentially most of the people are rational. There might be a little bit that are completely crazy, like kamikaze.
Absolutely.
Might be people that are altruistic, like I would try to make sure my blockchain works well. But there are a lot of people in the middle that just follow, the incentives. And I think accountability can really help if we can understand protocol that would take into account that most of the people are rational, some of them are kamikaze, and some of them are honest. We'll have something that is very close to the reality and that is more secure than what we can see.
I think that's really interesting because, having studied economics in past life and not just doing that at uni, but also doing it in work where, as an analyst, my role in equity research was to look at more of the macroeconomic side of things. And economics is one of those areas where you have to make a lot of assumptions. And there's so many edge cases, but you have to do that for models to work, because at the time, the technology wasn't there for us to map out all of these different, the real world, so to speak. I do wonder if we can actually get better, given that technology is better there. But just, that's an aside. Diving into what you've said there around security, let's go beyond the headlines. And you talk at various things, like we run our DeFi association. So thank you for coming along to that and speaking about failures. And I don't know if it was the Optus hacks or the airlines or something. And we spoke about like different failures there. But one thing that comes through strongly in our last conversation, even episode 22, was a bit of frustration. And I share this with you, that not at new problems, but at known weaknesses just keeping on repeating. You're currently working on vulnerabilities in bandwidth consumption across several major blockchains, Aptos, Algorand, Avalanche, Solana, and obviously like Redbelly. But what patterns are you seeing emerge in the research that you're doing there?
So it's still preliminary, the bandwidth usage study that we're running, but we're looking into the security of things. And going back to this frustration, I remember, I think one of the key problems that we have is that people in the blockchain space do not even talk the same language. And as long as we can really standardize what blockchain means, we're going to have a very hard time progressing all together. I remember I was writing this paper with Mark Staples. It was, I think, representing Australia at the ISO TC 307 working group,
Yep.
Which is a international standardization group. And we were working this standardization paper. I think it got published at IEEE Communication Standardization in 2018. So, and we were complaining about the fact that people were disagreeing about simple keywords, right? So when we talk about consensus, for example, someone says, still today, right, proof of work solves consensus, or proof of stake solves consensus, which is nonsensical in the sense that no, proof of stake doesn't solve consensus, right? It's just a requirement for a validator to have enough stake in order to propose a block or to validate a block or to something, right? But it doesn't say that the block will be unique, which is the output of the consensus. So trying to just, agree on things would help a lot. And would help people progress. And I guess that's where my frustration comes from, is when I see a lot of contradiction coming up online and people complaining about, blockchain trilemma is impossible to solve. Oh, I've solved the blockchain.
Exactly.
All these kind of addictions that you have everywhere just because things are not well defined. This is frustrating because as a scientist, I believe that we need to properly define things and also agree on the terminology. And I don't prefer one or the other. It's just that we need to make sure we speak the same language if we want to help each other in progress.
Being truthful with the language as well. Like some might say, no, I am decentralized. No, you aren't decentralized is what other people will say. But in all of it, it's a spectrum. If they had just said from the start that on the spectrum of decentralization, we are further along this side of things because of this, instead of saying we're fully decentralized. And it's just like, guys, we aren't even agreeing. Like you're both on the same side of things, but you're going into the details, not realizing it in the bigger picture. We just look silly as an industry if we're fighting with each other this way and can't agree. And I think standards help us get to that next stage, which is outside adoption, which we need from businesses, traditional commerce, etc., to take it
and
take
build
forward.
Upon that. Like we complain that the regulation doesn't go fast enough.
Correct. Yep.
But
it's
as
a lot.
Technologists, we cannot agree on the terminology. How can you expect a lawyer to come up with an understanding of what we mean, right?
Yeah.
And as you said rightly, like decentralization is a spectrum. So we should probably say what it means to be enough decentralized, right?
Yes.
And is there a way we can measure it, maybe scientifically? And that would help lawyers say, okay, it has a decentralized system, therefore it can be a public token infrastructure. Or no, it's not decentralized, it's too centralized, therefore it cannot be a public token infrastructure. And I think this will help regulation also progress faster if, as technologists, we could agree in the first place.
Running the innovation arm of a law firm, and my new role will be announced to people interested in my journey and stuff. But just being in the blockchain space here in Australia and also overseas, and you probably see this in your travels, so many lawyers are in this because we are trying to figure this stuff out. And I agree, we just need to have better discussions and just be more truthful. But probing deeper into this, why do you think that performance and bandwidth costs remain underanalyzed in public narratives? I think it feels like they are, despite being really critical for production systems. This is something that you've looked into as well, right?
Yeah, performance is very important. So we, there are solutions that are quite fast, and I think we can solve a lot of problems in terms of financial payments, for example, transfer trades and so on. We can do things very, very fast. We have this quasi-instant finality. Maybe it's not high frequency trading yet, but we can do things pretty instantaneous, right? And that's great for the user, right? It's seamless. They can pay with blockchain technology. If they take Redbelly, it's going to be almost instantaneous, their payment. So we can see these things have been maturing, right? And
yes.
And Redbelly is not the only one who can achieve these good performances, right? So there are others that have built great technology in terms of performances. The problem is that once you want to make your technology more secure, and we were talking about post-quantum crypto, for example, then you have to make sure that the performance is still there, right? Or you want to be accountable and make sure you incentivize the right people to do the right thing. How can you do that at large scale? Because now you're producing, for example, in the case of accountability, we need to create undeniable proof of fraud of someone trying to steal money or trying to double spend. How do you do that? And you force everyone to prove with a cryptographic proof that they are not lying, like sending different messages to different participants of the network, for example. And this cryptographic proof that you can combine together in order to get an undeniable proof of fraud takes you a little bit of CPU time. So now if you multiply that at large scale, can you still achieve the performance that you used to have where your system was not accountable?
Yeah.
And so I think now we have to think in terms of performance measurement, still like latency is very important, throughput is important, but also as we increase the size of the system and as we're making more secure, right, through accountability or cryptographic means.
I think it's really important for people to just be aware of this, because I think we just accept surface level claims. We accept that, this one is the fastest and that's it. This one has the most TVL and that's it. And it's like, no, for something to work, it might not be the fastest, it might not be the most in TVL, but it works for that specific situation because it fits all these other things that as an industry, we are publicly not really measuring. I know researchers are looking into this, like better ways to measure tokenization in RWA than just TVL, for example. So it's good that you guys are, as a blockchain, really figuring out how to actually make this work. I do a lot of stuff in the AI space, and it's not just like plug and play, put something in. You actually have to figure out how does it exist with, how does it fit with existing systems, and how do you actually make it so that it's not just good and useful, it's a utility, but it actually is convenient for people. So there's all these trade-offs, and everything you said there is about these trade-offs. But let's just dive into accountability as a security primitive. You'll be speaking, as was mentioned before, various things, but one of those is at ETHCC. So that's a big Ethereum conference, I think in Paris?
Yeah. No, it's going to be in the south of France, Cannes.
Oh, okay. Right.
I should say Cannes. Ethereum Community Conference. I think it's, I don't know, on the website they said it's one of the biggest European blockchain.
I think it is, yeah.
I thought it was blockchain week in Paris, but no, apparently this one is bigger.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know what's the metric that compare these conferences, but
again, we have to have standards around the metrics. They're measuring which conferences are better.
That's interesting, and I'll be speaking there about accountability.
Yeah,
so that's good.
So it's accountability, not just like cryptography or decentralization in general. Do you think it's it's becoming like a foundational sort of like security primitive for blockchains, this accountability notion, as you just mentioned there. So can you give us a glimpse of like what you're going to be, and when is it, by the way? When is ETC?
I think it's very beginning of April.
Soon.
Yeah, coming soon. Yeah, and
okay.
To prepare the trick.
Okay.
But yeah. So it's interesting, this notion of accountability.
Yeah.
It's when you say, is it about cryptography? Is it about decentralization? Actually, there are several communities, right? So my colleagues in cryptography have been working on accountable cryptography, and that's a pretty cool topic.
Okay.
And we can talk about that for a minute.
Sure.
Again, it's super interesting. And then there is the distributed system accountability, which is the thing I've been working on. I remember my colleagues, in particular, Pet Kuznetsov and some friends of his, some colleagues at Max Planck Institute, working on peer review. That was like the first distributed system that was accountable. That was some time ago. I think it was pre-blockchain, But there was this notion of accountability in a distributed system. So decentralized accountability, if you want.
Yeah.
Making sure that, if you have a decentralized environment where everyone is contributing to the environment, then you can see who is doing something wrong, right?
Yeah.
So there is some notion of accountability. Now, there were strong assumptions that they were using that were not fitting the blockchain environment.
Oh, okay.
Where we wanted to introduce accountability. So we had to change things. And we did that in introducing polygraph, which was the idea that you can generate on the fly undeniable proof of fraud, even though you didn't have this synchrony assumption. So even though you were working on internet where you cannot really bound the time it will take for any message to be received. So that's one side of things. And then we kept working I had great students working with that, on that with me. And then I visited the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Lausanne. We continued working on accountability over there,
right,
with also some great and brilliant minds. But in parallel to that, a lot of cryptographers have been working on what is called accountable cryptography. And that's also a very pretty cool topic. What I like about that is the idea that you can be anonymous.
Yep.
And you can still be accountable. right? And that might seem paradoxical. Like, how could you make someone accountable if you don't know who this is, right?
Yeah.
And this is what Redbelly is about, right? So it's like introducing accountability without storing any personal identifiable
But
information.
maintaining that.
And it looks like magic. When you're not a cryptographer and you look at these things, it looks a bit like magic. It's like zero knowledge proof, right? When you think about it, you're like, what? How does it work? And when you go to the bottom of it, you realize that, oh my God, this is so
makes
clever.
so much sense. Yeah,
and it's just math. And so I remember I was working. He's the student. He was doing honors at University of Sydney.
Yeah.
And then he moved to Switzerland to do a PhD on crypto.
Yeah.
But we did something very nice, which was an idea of electronic voting. Right?
Okay.
So where you have a group of people who can vote, right? So they send their vote, but it's anonymous. So you don't know what people would vote. And that makes sense, right? You don't want to reveal your vote because otherwise people
bias,
influence you, bribe you, and so on in order to influence your vote. But at the same time, we were able to detect double voting, right? This is pretty cool. So you don't know who is voting what, but if someone tries to do two votes that are different, then the system will detect it.
That's it.
And it seems magical, but it's just traceable ring signature, right? So there's this primitive that exists in cryptography that you can use in order to do that. You don't know where the vote is coming from. So the signed messages are coming from someone in this ring, right? It belongs to the group. So you know that it's a valid vote. But as soon as the same person that has already voted vote a second time, then you can detect it. And that's really the beauty of anonymous accountability, if you want, which seems paradoxical, but works pretty well.
Yeah, it's funny. It seems, I remember doing like whatever unit maths I did at high school and university, and I didn't really dive deep into maths. My colleague, folks will know Arturo, he's got a maths background, but it's interesting that math is the thing that sits behind this magic, and we used to call it like mathemagics. Like it's not just something that you can just put a few numbers together and it'll just come up with something randomly. There is some home truths to it. So maths being behind what looks like magic in the blockchain space, but it's also the thing that drives the large language models. It's just math at the end of the day. So it's really interesting that we've now got technology that can do things. Math has not changed. Like 1 + 1 is always equaled, throughout history. It's just a core tenet of the universe. Maybe not in quantum, but,
it's a different universe.
It is. We won't get into dimensions and Marvel comics and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's interesting that math is the thing that drives these brand new, ways of doing things that will unlock great things thanks to blockchain and thanks to AI. Let's dive into more of the RWAs and the workflows and assets and whatnot. There's been a lot of this noise around RWAs recently. Like, we're seeing major announcements. Exchanges talking about tokenization, like the New York Stock Exchange is the latest, NASDAQ, et cetera, and large institutions entering the conversation more and more than what we've seen before. When you look past the headlines, where do you see the real value of RWA tokenization emerging from your point of view?
I think it's going way beyond what the New York Stock Exchange is trying to do. So if you look at what they're doing is that they're allowing 24/7 trading of digital assets. That's one thing, but it's still a walled garden infrastructure that they're offering, right? Which is not what real-world asset tokenization is aiming at. Which is, as we mentioned earlier, it's like about collateral mobility, composability. If you cannot get these things feasible, then you lose like one of the key promise of real-world asset tokenization. So if you build your walled garden infrastructure that is completely centralized, of course, you can maybe make it faster than it used to be. You can make it tradable 24/7.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yes.
That's a benefit, I understand, for a lot of people. But still, you're losing the point in the sense that you cannot take this asset in a completely different use case in order to, to get a loan, using it as a collateral. Securing other services. You cannot do that because it's just a trading infrastructure that is centralized, New York Stock Exchange. It's like, centralized blockchain. Like if you take Base, for example, like that's great, but it's centralized. Like how can you believe that people will be using it in order to trade all sorts of assets? Larry Fink was saying recently that there should be a single blockchain. And I think that goes in the right direction in the sense that if we can have this decentralized environment where people can trade everything, they can really trade something for something else. And that's really the promise of real world asset tokenization being fulfilled. Now, of course, the way you're going to do that is, this single blockchain, I don't think there will be only one blockchain, right? Because there will still blockchain that are completely anonymous. There will be Zcash for people who have other intention than trading financial asset in a regulated environment. But I think it's this idea of having a global system that is regulated for financial assets it's the key component that will fulfill this promise of real-world asset.
Yeah, it might not be one system, it might not be one blockchain, but it could be one more unified system going back to standards, as you mentioned before.
Decentralization is needed,
Absolutely. And the thing is, like, without that decentralization piece, it's like it limits what it can do from up here and going, well, we're only going to do these things, like the 24/7 trading. There is so much more that could be done. Like, imagine the possibilities in the future if we do get to that stage where people might have a lot of money in shares, but they, through superannuation, etc., or pension funds, but they don't have as much in, say, being able to buy and purchase in other assets, but giving people that capability. And sure, you might put guardrails around that. In Australia, they have this forced pension fund system because it helped people put money aside and less burden on the government to provide for a growing and aging population. Now, there might be ways that people can unlock that if they're given access to things. The key is going to be interoperability. And if if these systems just remain closed and not interoperable, you're right, there is a limit to the benefits and stuff there. But do you agree that with RWAs, we need to get better at understanding, just to get them adopted, just better at understanding workflows, real life workflows, for example, the cash flows, the obligations, settlement processes that happen in real world kind of workflows, rather than just simply representing assets on chain. What do you think about that?
No, yeah, totally. And I think it goes back to, you can build the best tech. Yeah, it can be useless, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You really have to understand the pain point.
It's fastest, but no one uses it.
Yeah. For example, you can come up with something that is super tech, but nobody cares because they don't see the potential of it, or because you didn't bridge the gap between the customer and your infrastructure, right? So we need to work on these products that will help, solve the pain points of the customers. For us, we've been onboarding customers through this acquisition of Liquidize. Now we have a tokenizer product that is quite understandable by trustees, right? So you're a trustee, you want to use a blockchain technology, you look at what is out there, and you realize that, if you take tokenizer, I can tokenize assets. I can have investors buying shares. I can have investors trading shares. I can do that very fast. It's transparent. Everything is secure. There is no perfect security, but so far so good. Like Redbelly blockchain has not been hacked. It has been up and running 100% of the time since the mainnet was launched. So far so good. Touching wood.
And I think there's wood in this, I don't know.
Yeah, there is always this upside risk that something goes wrong. So I don't want to say that everything is perfect, but so far so good. And you can see these customers now using it. And that makes a lot of sense. If you don't bridge this gap, which is, so tokenizer in terms of, novelty might not be as groundbreaking as what we have been doing with Redbelly blockchain, pushing the boundaries of a scalable distributed system. But still, it was novel. They did research coming up with tokenizer, right? At the time, you couldn't predict that the smart contract will allow you to do these things. Like I remember Liquidize and talking to Matt Mills explaining to me how they came up with this infrastructure that would allow people to trade private company shares, right? And that was the beginning of tokenizer that we have now today, and that has these customers. And so there was some novelty there, and this missing link is so important because otherwise nobody can tokenize real-world asset. It's too complicated. You need to access this MetaMask wallet, and then you need this private key for what, or this all these steps, 12-word passphrase, that you store on a piece of paper. People are not ready to do that, especially in the financial industry. Like, they're not ready to write things down on a piece of paper. That's not the way to work. So you need to, help them take their hand and bring them to the environment. And the way you do that is that you build this product that looks like what they have been using so far. It's just more efficient, and it doesn't rely on paper and pencil. And once you do that, then you can really bring them on board.
Or Excel 2003.
Yeah, I think, when I say paper and pencil, I'm referring to Excel old versions.
There is so much of the real world of finance that is still stuck. And look, when I say still stuck, I think there is a good use for spreadsheets. It's a great way to test things and do things and calculate things quickly, but to have multiple millions and billions and trillions of dollars of money running and flowing through only Excel spreadsheets, obviously we need to build systems, and this is about building better systems. But you talk about that real world, and I think there is this difference between, and I talk about this with Arturo as well, like utility versus like ease of use. And this is all part of this overall adoption question. And it's a recurring tension in tokenization. It's whether utility alone is enough, I think. If a system's powerful, but let's say it's difficult to use, or it's difficult to explain, or difficult to even budget, and hard to justify there, do you think it can ever get beyond pilots?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Like you can see, like budgeting something is super important for someone. They want to know where they're going. And we were discussing about, fixed transaction fees. I think that's needed in order for people to plan ahead and say, okay, I can use your service because I know at the end of the day how much I'm going to be paying depending on the number of customers that I will have and the number of transactions per second that I will have. And therefore, I can budgetize this in advance. I think this is key, like these blockchain systems that have been extremely volatile and having varying transaction fees were also an obstacle to the adoption of this blockchain technology in traditional system. We have to make as the technologists or the people who are building this technology of blockchain system, distributed ledger, we have to make the final mile towards the customer and simplify things for them and making sure that, okay, it's going to be almost like what you used to have. It's just going to be cheaper by that much. And it's going to be faster.
I think it's a very adult way of looking at it compared to like the evolution, blockchain going through its like teenage years, this concept of institutional trust. Institutions, they don't adopt infrastructure just because it's exciting. They might go to the meetups and stuff like that and participate, but they adopt because it behaves reliably, right? When things go wrong. For you, what does institutional trust like actually, what does institutional trust actually rest on in blockchain systems per se? Like what are organizations really assessing, do you think, beneath the surface?
Yeah, so I think institutions are forced to comply with regulation, right? So at the end of the day, they have constraints. And if you come up with a solution to them that will not, comply with the constraints that they have, then they won't be using it because they would not be legally entitled to use it, right? So really the first thing to do is to understand where they come from and comply with regulation, or make sure that, maybe on my network, I won't allow North Korea to steal assets. There was this a bit hacks that we were talking about previously, or I was talking about that and with other people, but I remember like this a bit hack, like several years later, the same, probably a different group, but again, North Korea presumably attacked a bit and managed to hack it. Why do we have this system that are, letting anyone who is completely anonymous come along, hack the system, and get away with the loot without having any penalties? This is unbelievable. As long as you have that, I don't see any. I would not recommend any institution to go and use this system, right? They would expose themselves. That's true. I don't know, money laundering, terrorism financing potentially. So these are things that they are not supposed to allow, right? They have to have processes in place that I call constraints that are imposed by the regulation in their jurisdiction. And for that, they can use something like Redbelly that will make sure that everyone has been identified before coming in. That's the minimum, right? And maybe they might have to implement other constraints or checks in order to comply with the regulation.
I think we're seeing this like in our blockchain space, but also in like the AI space, people are realizing that it's not just bigger, better, faster models, more reasoning, but you can have the simplest of AI models, not going back too far, like GPT-4 even. And as long as you've got the right sorts of guardrails and systems that connect to it and ability to validate and just see how tasks are broken up and to be able to put in these systems that you design around the model, ways to really interact well with these models. Applying that knowledge to blockchain, it's the same sort of thing. It's not like blockchain would just solve everything and just sit on its own. These solutions, these applications built on blockchain, they actually need to fit into existing systems and fit into workflows. And this is, I guess, what people need to understand, that Redbelly is not just, hey, let's just get everything on chain, but that's part of it. But there's all this hard work beneath the surface around understanding how do actually we get these things fitting into existing workflows. So that's built for the long term. How do you think designing for ordinary days, the audits, the outages, the compliance reviews, how do you think that changes the long-term viability of any network?
I don't know. I think the existence of the network are also changing the way we define the compliance. So, it's also going the other direction.
Oh, yeah, true.
Yeah, that's a tricky question. Not sure I can answer this one.
Okay. No, that might happen. It could change. Like right now we do compliance after the fact. In a future world with blockchain, it's because we can build in rules in place and limitations in place, it may change how we look at compliance because it's more active rather than reactive and stuff. So we can come back to that in future. But just to round out, what do you think the audience should be paying attention to? Do you think, for example, if someone's evaluating blockchain infrastructure in 2026, which is weird to say because it's still so new a year, what should they focus on that they might have overlooked, say, just even a few years ago?
Yeah, there's so much things to look at, and it takes a long time and it requires a lot of effort from various people. We've been looking at that. We started with this Diablo benchmark just to look at the performances of the blockchain. Then we moved to stable, which was, the way to change Diablo in order to make it assess the fault tolerance of blockchain technologies. Now we have changed stable, which was this new benchmarking framework for fault tolerance. We have changed it into something else that assesses the security of the blockchain across several black box attacks that we can do on blockchains and see if we can hack these systems without understanding the underlying protocol or changing the underlying protocol. So really treating the blockchains as black boxes. And now we're trying to understand, like we have seen problems in Avalanche and Solana, right? So we managed to break them. So we were running this protocol, like the same that you have on mainnet, but we were deploying them in our test environment, if you want, right? So we had a distributed system of machines. We deployed the code base, and then we managed to do some attacks and break it, which means that they would stop treating transactions, right? So Solana would receive transaction, but this transaction would never be committed, or at least we ran the experiments for long enough to realize that, something was stuck. And some nodes were crashed as well. So we diagnosed the system. We realized that actually there was some kind of a problem that was due to things happening in parallel, like some variable that should have been initialized at the right time when something else happened. And because this was not happening at the right time, then essentially all the nodes were panicking and crashing.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, it's a bug, right?
Yeah.
So of course we notified Solana and so on, but we also wanted to understand better. So what makes it work this way? Why doesn't it perform well in some cases? And then what we started doing is we took this blockchain environment that we had set up. So I'm mentioning the Avalanche and Solana getting stuck, but we evaluated other blockchains. Aptos, which was vulnerable to some denial of service attacks when we were sending too many messages because we could predict who will be the leader of the Aptos consensus protocol. And if you know that, then you can denial of service it. Or there was Algorand and Redbelly, of course, that were evaluated. So we had all these blockchains that we looked at. And what we decided to do is to even go at a lower level and say, okay, let's look at how much they use the network. And that was also very insightful. So we just looked at how many bits of information were sent from one node to any other node, right? And we did that for all the nodes, right? So we had this matrix and matrix, and we could see, okay, this is the number of bits that are being sent by this node. This is the number of bits that are being received by this node from this, and this node. So we could capture that in heat maps, where essentially you have all the nodes that are sending to all the other nodes.
Yep.
And you have this matrix with some cells, and each cell has a background color, and the color indicates the number of bits that are being sent by this node to the other node. And so you can draw this heat map where you can see that.
I remember seeing that.
If it's red or yellow, it means that it's super hot, and that's a lot of bits that have been exchanged. While if it's green or blue, then it's quite cold. It means that just few bits were sent between this node and that node. And then what it reveals is that, Solana uses a lot of bandwidth.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting. So we scratch our heads and we started thinking, how could that be that it uses so much more than the other blockchains? So the second step was, maybe they have bigger transactions. If the transactions are bigger and they have to exchange, like all the nodes have to exchange with each other, then it would make sense that they use more bandwidth, right? Yeah. Because the transactions are bigger. And we remember from past experiences that, for example, R3 Corda use huge transactions.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the case. So we measured the transaction of Solana, and we realized that these are not the biggest transactions. So that's not the reason. And then when you go down into the protocol and you realize that Solana is using something for reliability, which is erasure codes, then you realize that, they're replicating the information more than necessary in case they lose packets, so they can reconstruct the content.
Yeah.
And then it makes a lot of sense. So we did that for all the blockchain, and we drew a very interesting conclusion. This is something that is ongoing, so we didn't publish this work yet.
Okay.
But we have been exchanging with experts, trying to get feedback. And these little things tell you so much about why this blockchain is not performing well, why this blockchain is not reliable, why does it not tolerate failures, or why it can be hacked in some cases, right? The network tells you a lot. So little by little, we're progressing our understanding of all these blockchain technologies. But I would say there are so many ways you can tackle the same problem. For us, looking at the number of bits that were exchanged was very insightful.
I think it's going to be important for people to understand that, with Redbelly, what they get is this academic rigor, not just looking at your own, but even looking at how blockchains in general behave. As you said, you guys mentioned that you reach out to Solana after you see this sort of like vulnerability, and you look to understand it more. And I think this is important for adoption, because for businesses that want to work with any kind of blockchain, they need to know who they're working with. They need to see that there is this level of testing and analysis to really figure out where those edge cases are, because they're not going to understand that. They're the ones that are adopting blockchain. It's up to us as the experts to do that. You've got a lot of great writing. You've got a lot of great events coming up, Vincent. We're looking forward to seeing more about that, and then getting you on next month for another Redbelly Insights. But for now, thank you so much, Vincent, for your time.
Thank you.
Yo. Redbelly Insights, the podcast flow. Expert guest knowledge, watch the wisdom grow. Open markets, that's the motto, loud and clear. Trap fire, meets the fire, banish all the fear. Redbelly, serpent in the grass, shedding no skins, moving real fast, bridging the gap. Future in his bite, Redbelly network shining never so bright. Yo, centralized chains, now we ain't playing that game. Decentralized dreams, shouting out the name. Partners on deck, stories they unveil. No more closed doors, just a financial trail. Redbelly, serpent in the grass, shedding no skins, moving real fast, bridging the gap. Future in his bite, Redbelly network shining never so bright. Yo, screens gleaming, vision so keen, capital flowing. A brand new scene from the outback, whispers to the global stage. Redbelly's turned in a brand new page. Redbelly, serpent in the grass, shedding no skins, moving real fast, bridging the gap. Future in his bite, Redbelly network shining never so bright.